My friends, it is not every handsome man who walks into your life that is a blessing. Sometimes, the sweetest fruit hides the sharpest thorn. Listen very well to this story, for it happened a long time ago in the quiet village of Umuoma, where the morning sun paints the hearts gold. The people lived simple lives, filled with laughter, gossip, and the sound of pistols pounding yam in the evening. There lived a young widow named Ukoti, whose days were heavy with silence and grief. She was as beautiful as the morning sun, yet her eyes carried the sadness of 100 rainy seasons. Her husband had died suddenly. No sickness, no war, no warning, leaving her with nothing but a small farm and a only child, little Oviko. Life was not easy for her. The market women whispered behind her back. "That woman is cursed," said one of the women. "Her husband's death was no accident." "Shh! Don't speak too loud," interrupted another woman. "She might bring bad luck to your home." But Ukoti walked with her head high. She would not let gossip break her spirit. Every morning, Ukoti tied her wrapper tightly, strapped Oviko to her back, and walked to her cassava farm. She walked under the hot sun until her back ached, and still the harvest was barely enough to feed both of them. One evening, after selling her cassava in the market, Oviko asked his mother, "Mama, when will I eat meat again?" Ukoti forced a smile and then said, "My son, we shall eat plenty of meat when the rains bless us with a good harvest. We can't afford meat right now unless we have a good harvest." Oviko asked that question because they rarely eat meat in their home. But the little boy was so fond of eating meat. The mother and child continued living in pain till the day everything changed. It was on a market day when a stranger came riding into the village on a tall dark horse. He wore a flowing brown attire. His gold necklace was shining under the sun, and the smell of foreign perfume followed him. His name was Oleke. The market women stared at Oleke in shock. "Who is this man?" they asked, but no one seems to know anything about him. Oleke walked from one shop to another, buying generously. He paid double without bargaining, gave kola nuts to the old, and gave money to the young. When he got to Koti's shop, he paused, his eyes softened, and then said, "You have the most beautiful smile in this market, yet it hides behind sadness. May I buy all your cassava today?" He did not only buy all her cassava, he also left extra money in her hands that day. This was a gesture that got Ukoti so excited that she cooked meat for Viku that evening. Indeed, the boy was very happy while eating the meat that day. From that moment, Oleke visited the market often. He bought Ukoti gifts, colorful clothes, palm oil, smoked fish, and little toys for Viku. As a result of his generosity, the boy adored him with his heart. In the evenings, Oleke helped to repair Ukoti's leaking roof, carried heavy firewood for her, and sat outside her hut telling very interesting stories. Slowly, the walls Ukoti had built around her heart began to crumble. Oleke and Ukoti became so close that they spent time together almost every day. But it was not everyone in that village who celebrated their new love. An old seer was against it. At the edge of the market, the old blind seer with grey hair like cotton sat with his carved staff. One day, as Oleke passed by, the seer whispered, "It is not all men who came from the land of the living. Some came just to destroy." Oleke did not hear her, but the wind carried those words very far. One evening, under the red glow of sunset, Oleke came to Ukoti's hut carrying a jar of palm wine. He knelt on one knee and said, "Ukoti, I want you as my wife, and Oviko as my son. You will never know hunger again." Ukoti's heart pounded. She thought of Oviko's tired face, the empty nights, and the gossip of the villagers. "Don't worry, I'll treat you and your son very nice," continued Oleke. Ukoti agreed, for she thought the gods had sent her a helper and a companion, but she was wrong. The wedding was grand, with drums and laughter filling the air. People danced until their feet ached. But a short distance away from the crowd, the blind seer stood still, her face unreadable. On their wedding night, Oleke and Ukoti slept on the same bed. But just before midnight, he stood up and said, "I need some fresh air. Let me sit outside for a while." He slipped into the darkness. The next night, he did the same thing. The night after was still the same. Every midnight, he disappeared only to return before dawn, and this got Ukoti so worried. When Ukoti asked where he went, he would simply say, "I was sitting outside the hut and taking in some fresh air." Soon, other strange things began to happen. The family goat refused to go near Oleke. Oviko woke up screaming one night, saying he saw a glowing skeleton with his mother in their hut. The blind seer began lingering near their home, as though waiting for something. Still, Ukoti ignored the warning of the blind seer, for she felt Oleke was too kind to be evil. One stormy night, the rain fell in sheets, while lightning split the sky. Again, Oleke left at midnight, but Ukoti followed with bare foot. They walked for hours before she hid behind a giant tree and saw what she never expected to see. Oleke peeled off his skin like cloth. Beneath it was not a man, but a glowing skeletal spirit, eyes burning red, ribs shimmering like moonlight. The spirit descended into a deep pit from which rose the voices of the dead, whispers, wails, and laughter not of this world. Ukoti was so scared, and under her feet was as hot as a burning funnel. Suddenly, Oleke cried out in a very loud voice, "Wife, you should not be here." Ukoti turned around and started running home. Her legs trembled as she tore through the narrow bush path, and her heart pounding louder than the crickets in the night. As she was running, she could still see it in her mind. Oleke, her husband, lowering himself into that forbidden pit like a shadow crawling back into the earth. She didn't know what was inside, but she knew one thing: nothing good ever came from such places. When she got home that night, she leaned on the wall with so much fear. Her chest heaved as though Her ribs wanted to break free. That night, as the moon sat high in the sky, Ukoti lay on her bamboo bed, unable to sleep. Her mind played endless scenes. What if Oleke returned and found out she had seen him? What if he came for her in the night? What if she didn't live to tell the tale? In that moment, she made up her mind. She took a small calabash of palm oil as an offering and slipped out into the darkness with her son. The night air was thick, oats hotted from the trees, and the ground felt colder as she walked deeper into the forest path that led to the hut of the old blind seer, popularly called Mama Kiru. She is the most dreaded seer in 7 villages. Mama Kiru's hut stood apart from the world, a crooked little shelter, surrounded by bottles hanging on strings, each one filled with strange liquids that glowed faintly under the moonlight. The wind made them cling together like whispering spirits. Ukoti knocked gently. "Come in," Mama Kiru said, even before Ukoti could speak. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of burning herbs. Mama Kiru sat, her eyes closed, her lips moving silently, as though speaking to someone Ukoti could not see. "You saw what you were not meant to see," the old seer said, her eyes snapping open. They were milky white, like a river in flood season. Ukoti's voice trembled. "Mama, my husband, Oleke, I saw him." "In the pit," the seer interrupted. "That pit is the mouth of a curse older than this village, and now your life is tied to it." Ukoti's knees weakened. She dropped the calabash of palm oil before the old seer. "Please, Mama, what should I do? Will he harm me?" The old woman leaned closer, her breath warm against Ukoti's ears. "You are the only one who can stop him. But to do so, you must be ready to touch the darkness without letting it touch your soul." Ukoti's eyes widened. "What does that mean, Mother?" she asked. Mama Kiru only gave a chilling smile. "When the rooster crows twice on the day of the blood moon, you will understand." It was still dark when Oleke returned from wherever he had been. His face was different, darker and sharper, as if the night had reshaped him. He pushed open the hut door, and it was empty. His wife and Oviko were gone. That moment, he screamed in anger, and the biggest palm tree in the village sprang up from the earth and crashed into a hut. Behold, the destruction was massive. Minutes later, the entire forest trembled under his voice as he walked along the bush paths to Mama Kiru's hut. Each step he took that morning brought destruction to the village. "Mama Kiru!" he screamed in anger the moment he got to the seer's hut. "Bring out my wife, or I will burn this hut to ashes." But the old seer stepped out slowly, leaning on her staff. She was small in size, but her presence loomed like a mountain. "You will not," she said boldly. "Don't you ever dare me," he screamed again. "Stay away from her. You don't belong here," the old seer said in a loud voice. Suddenly, Oleke brought out something like powder and sprinkled it on the ground. As he was sprinkling the substance, destruction was taking place in different parts of the village, and so the old seer reacted immediately. She stretched her staff towards the white substance, and its power was neutralized instantly. Oleke stretched his walking stick towards the old seer, and the battle for supremacy heightened when the seer also stretched her staff towards the walking stick. Oleke's walking stick seems powerful. It was overpowering the staff of the old seer. The battle was still on when Mama Kiru fell to the ground, and it appeared she had been defeated. Ukoti watched how Oleke's walking stick was overpowering the old seer, and she became very scared. Suddenly, the seer started speaking in tongues no one could understand. She did the incantation for a while before her staff started glowing like never before. The staff kept glowing till Oleke's stick exploded, and that was when he disappeared into the forest. While Oleke and the old seer were battling, the villagers were wailing and crying as a result of the destruction going on in different parts of the village by that time. Immediately Oleke disappeared, Ukoti stormed out of the hut and rushed over to Mama Kiru. "Mama, are you okay?" Ukoti asked while helping the old woman back to her feet again. "Yes, I'm fine, but we'll be back," replied the old seer. "Mama, what are we going to do to get him away forever?" whispered Ukoti. The seer's voice was low and firm. "You need to prepare, for when the blood moon rises, he will come again, and that will be the real battle." "Real battle?" asked Ukoti. "Yes," replied the old seer. "He is not of this world. The pit is the gate of restless spirits. To free yourself, you must perform the ritual of release. But be warned, it may cost you dearly." When they got back into the hut, the old seer gave Ukoti a calabash, 7 kola nuts, and a single white feather. The old seer instructed Ukoti on what to do before the frightened woman left that day. That midnight, as Ukoti was carrying out the instructions given by the old seer, Oleke appeared. As he approached her, she screamed so loud that her voice was heard deep down in the forest. "Oleke, return to where you came from." Oleke wasn't moved by her voice. He kept walking towards her until she smashed the kola nuts on the ground. He staggered, but he didn't fall. "Oleke," she called the second time. "Return back to where you came from." Again, Oleke staggered, but he did not fall. "Oleke," she cried the third time in a very loud voice. "Return back to where you came from." She smashed some kola nut on the ground again. The earth split, and a blast of hot air overshadowed Oleke. He screamed in pain and then disappeared. In the morning, Ukoti narrated the event of the previous night to the old seer. Indeed, Ukoti had done as she was instructed to do, and so Oleke was gone forever. The sun was bright. Ukoti felt lighter than she had in years. She was free, and that was all she desired. The villagers celebrated their freedom from Oleke's evil grip. Drums were rolled out, food was in abundance, and the best palm wine was served. They sang, danced, and ate in jubilation. As the drums of celebration echoed through the village, Ukoti sat quietly at the edge of the gathering, her son, Oviku, asleep against her shoulders. The laughter of the people filled the night, yet her eyes wandered to the dark forest, where shadows still whispered in the trees. She knew her battle was not just with Oleke, but with the silence of her own heart. The old seer placed a hand on Ukoti's shoulder and said softly, "My daughter, beauty may draw eyes, wealth may blind the heart, but only truth can protect the soul. Never forget, what looks like light can sometimes come from the pit itself. Okoti closed her eyes, letting those words sink deep into her spirit, for she had learned the hardest truth of all. Not every gift is a blessing, and not every man who smiles at a widow's tears actually came to wipe them away. Some came only to sharpen the sorrow. From that day, Okoti lived not in fear, but in wisdom. She taught Oviku that hunger is easier to bear than a poisoned meal, and that patience is a shield stronger than gold. And as the boy grew, he carried his mother's lesson in his heart like secret fire. For a long time, Okoti found in her son the entire solace and companion she needed in life. She stayed away from all men and focused only on her son. The mother and son spent most of their time in their cassava farm, working from sunrise to sunset. Different men came requesting her hand in marriage, but because of the ugly experience she had with Oleke, she turned them down. "I don't need a man, I need a life," she said to the men who approached her for marriage. And so, for a long time, she lived a quiet and peaceful life with Oviku. One night, as she sat with Oviku outside their hut, Mama Kiru arrived with a cheerful smile on her face. "Your season of loneliness is over," said the blind seer. "Tomorrow morning, you will meet a stranger. He is the one for you." Okoti's expression changed. "Mama, you know I don't need any man in my life right now," Okoti protested, but she was interrupted by the old seer. "Yes, you do. He's going to be a friend and not an enemy. He will dry your tears and restore your lost glory." The next morning, Okoti and Oviku were on their way to the farm when Mama Kiru's prophecies came to pass. As they walked under the rain along the bush path, they saw a stranger coming from the opposite direction. The stranger was holding an umbrella. He smiled the moment he saw them, but Okoti wasn't interested in his smile. She looked away, and then the stranger said, "I really don't mean to intrude, but I wouldn't mind giving you my umbrella." "That's not necessary. We don't need it," Okoti said, and then continued walking away. "Even if you don't, this young man needs it," the stranger said in a calm voice while looking at Oviku. "It's okay. I don't need it," said Oviku. "I'm fine." "You wouldn't know it's not okay for a young man like you to be walking under the rain till you start catching cold," the stranger said. "I mean no harm. Please, take the umbrella." That was when Okoti remembered Mama Kiru's prophecy the previous night. He is going to be a friend and not an enemy. It was the old seer's words that made Okoti to accept the generosity from the stranger that morning. That was the beginning of a relationship that changed their lives forever. Within a few hours, Okoti and Oviku discovered that the stranger was actually meant to be a friend because he was willing to do anything that would make them happy. Gradually, their friendship blossomed into a relationship, and it was a relationship that finally led to a grand wedding. The villagers were very happy to celebrate Okoti. Just as the old seer said, their marriage was full of joy and Okoti was happy again. Indeed, the new family enjoyed the rest of their days together. So, my friends, never forget the tale of Okoti. When life leaves you empty, do not fill the void with the first glittering thing that comes your way. The sweetest voice may hide the darkest pit. The brightest gift may carry the deepest curse. True salvation is not bought with gold. It is guided by wisdom, patience, and the courage to say no. We need to be careful of desperation because if we are too desperate, we may sometimes embrace what looks like salvation only to find ourselves in chains that are made of gold. And with that, the moon smiled at the village of Umuoma as if the gods themselves were whispering, "Let those who hear be wise."